Today I want to talk about the concept of comb filtering, and in order for you to understand comb filtering you need to understand some basic principles of phase. So if you haven't seen my episode on an introduction to phase, please go and check that out. It'll really help with what we're about to discuss today. Comb filtering isn't a filter at all, it's a delay effect, but the effect of the delay is to make it sound like a filter. And the easiest way to show it to you is with the use of sawtooth waves. So I'm going to create a simple saw wave in Hallian, and it sounds like that. It's a fairly horrible sound. So I'm actually going to turn it down for now and just get the thing going. So you can see in the oscilloscope we're generating a saw wave, and here we have all our harmonics. So the beauty of a sawtooth wave and why you see it in so many subtractive synthesizers is because it contains all harmonics, and that gives you lots of harmonic richness when you're in the subtractive synth world, which is why they're so great for filtering. They're also great for demonstrating comb filters. So here's a single sawtooth all on its own, and we can see the amplitude is minus 33-ish. Let's bring a second oscillator in. We'll turn this into a sawtooth. Set its phase exactly the same as oscillator 1. So now those two sawtooths are going to complement each other. And now we'll get exactly the same sawtooth. We've still got 130, 260 and so on and so on. But now we're louder. We're at minus 27, we were at minus 33, were we? You can see up here the amplitude is double what it used to be. In order to hear what a comb filter does, we need to bring the sound back in. And now I'm going to set these oscillators out of phase. So if I set 15-degree phase, which means that wave number 1 is beginning playback from this position, but wave number 2 is beginning playback from about here. They're not sine waves, they're sawtooth waves, but the concept is still the same. We have a complex wave and we're starting the playback of each of those complex waves from a different point. The waves themselves are still identical. We are playing the same wave just from a different start point. Now, see what it does in span. Got these massive wedges cut out of the tone. It looks like a comb. Let's set it to a different phase. Dramatically different tone, many more comb teeth. And for each one of the phase level variants, we're going to get a different shaped comb. So what's going on? When we have a complex wave with many harmonics, each one of those harmonics is a sine wave in its own right. Remember when if I take oscillator 1 out of the equation and just play a single sawtooth oscillator, you've got all these harmonics. Every single one of those peaks is a sine wave in its own right, and the sound that we're hearing is a combination of all of the amplitudes of all of those sine waves. When you take that complex map and offset it slightly, treat each one of those sine waves as if it's a completely independent thing, all on its own. So now we take the sine wave at 130, and we've got these two sine waves oscillating at 130 Hertz, and we've offset them slightly. Now that means that all of their relative amplitudes are going to be either added together or subtracted, one from the other, and we're going to get a different amplitude map for that sine wave. We're going to get a different volume for the fundamental frequency, and the same is going to apply at 260 Hertz as well. It has its own sine wave. It's a faster sine wave. It's oscillating twice as quickly, which means the bits where it's going up and the bits where it's going down, if we've offset these things by 15 degrees, by an arbitrary 15 degrees, we've moved the entire wave forwards by 15 degrees. And so each individual oscillating sine wave inside that graph is having a different relationship with its brother or sister. So every single one of these harmonics is now interacting with its sibling in a different way. Some of them combine, some of them destruct, and what we end up with is we start throwing some of the frequencies away. If you get like perfect destructive interference and one harmonic is exactly cancelling the other out, you're going to get a gap in the frequency range, and in fact that's what we see when we play those two oscillators. I'll bring it down again to a very small value, let's say 7 degrees. So with that very, very small offset, there's a relatively small number of cancellations where the harmonics are oscillating so quickly that they're actually cancelling each other out. The big harmonics don't tend to be affected quite so much by these very tiny adjustments. But as the phase changes, the harmonics that get picked on to be thrown out of the gang, if you like, because they've destructively interfered with their sibling, they change. They're constantly changing. So here we've got a notch at G sharp 7. If I change this slightly, there's G sharp 7. That notch has gone. We've now moved on somewhere else. We're having a different relationship. All of these harmonics are interacting with each other in a completely different way. But bear in mind that we've still got two identical and perfectly replicating waves. These waves are still oscillating at the same fundamental frequency. I'm still playing a C2. The fundamental is still 131, whatever it is, hertz. And so we get a consistent and repeating pattern. Whatever's going to happen on the first cycle is going to happen exactly the same on the second cycle. So we end up throwing these harmonics away. Now, what would happen if we applied a comb filter to white noise? White noise is all of the frequencies at an equal distribution. If I turn these oscillators off and engage the white noise module instead, set it to 100%. Okay, don't be fooled by this graph. This is a visual representation. Most spectrum analyzers favor treble frequencies because they have lower power ratings than bass frequencies. If I actually set the slope of span to 0, which means it's now going to represent all frequencies equally according to their actual amplitude, then that's what white noise really looks like. But typically when you look at it in a spectrum analyzer, you get that slope. So white noise is generating all of the frequencies at equal amplitude. What would happen if we took a copy of that white noise and offset it by a tiny time amount? In other words, we played 2 copies of the white noise slightly offset. Would we get comb filtering? Well, the answer is yes, but typically you can't apply phase changes to noise. You can do it via a circuitous and reasonably cute trick by adding a delay to the system. So if we introduce a delay unit, and what I want to do is set the delay time of this delay unit to a very small value, 10 milliseconds. And I'm going to feed almost the entire signal back into itself. So the oscillator is going to generate some white noise, which is all of the frequencies completely evenly distributed. And then that signal is going to be delayed by a tiny amount and then repeated. That's effectively the same as having multiple oscillators slightly offset. We've accomplished the same result just via a slightly circuitous route, because the delay unit is literally just replicating the wave. What do you think we're going to get? we have tone. How on earth have we generated tone out of white noise? Because we've comb filtered the noise and we've thrown a load of frequencies away. If you throw enough frequencies away from white noise, eventually you're going to get to the point where you have a sufficiently small number of frequencies for them to start identifying themselves as pitched tone. The delay time of the offset is fundamentally important, just as it was with our sawtooth example, in determining which pitch we hear. And you can see each time I decrease the delay time, we're throwing more and more of the sound away. Leaving fewer and fewer harmonics behind, and increasing the quality, if not necessarily the pleasantness, of the tone that we're hearing. And you can keep going right down to 0.1, which is the smallest time amount that you can actually set inside Hallion. What do we get? Sounds like we're in an airplane at 37,000 feet. So we have basically 3 harmonics left, and at this point we're not hearing that much tone anymore. The noise is once again dominating, but we do actually have harmonics there. How horrid is that? So that's a perfect illustration of how, when you mask a sound over the top of itself, very, very slightly offset, you're going to get all of these destructive interferences on the wave. And the more stuff you throw away, you're going to alter and colour the tone of the sound that you hear. And because of the regular notched manner in which that effect is applied, it's called a comb filter. Hope you found that useful. If you did, please consider subscribing, hit notifications, and you'll find out when my other content comes out. And I hope to see you then. Thanks very much for watching.